Welcome to Restart at Any Age. This is Susan Douglas, coming to you from the studio of Chez Serendip in beautiful Scots Valley. Chez Serendip is a 6-acre creative sanctuary in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where artists, healers, builders and dreamers gather to create a more beautiful world. You can find them on their website, chezserendip.com. CHEZSERENDIP, and they are on Instagram at Chez Serendip. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Will Barba, former neuroscience student and college soccer player who made a courageous pivot during COVID. He left a traditional path to follow his inner calling, choosing community and healing culture over a sales career. Together with his friend Tristan, Will founded the Temptations Bazaar and now serves as curator for this beautiful area we're in, the Chez Serendip in Scots Valley. Through 30-plus community events, art, music and intentional gatherings, Will helps people reconnect and remember, fostering healing, connection and reharmonization with ourselves, each other and the earth. In this conversation, Will shares his inspiring journey of change and practical wisdom for anyone feeling called to make their own life pivot. Welcome, Will Barba.
Thank you so much for having me, Susan.
Well, it's wonderful you're here. Well, you are here because you're the curator, so you're always here, which is fabulous. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
You began college as a neuroscience student and soccer player, interested in the expansion of consciousness. Looking back, what felt exciting about that original path, and what made you open to questioning it when COVID hit?
Well, I think the basis of what made neuroscience interesting to me was its incompleteness as a field. Mm-hmm. That was like really key to me. Is my dad, who is a neurosurgeon, he told me in a very like profound moment when I was young. He like said like, "Look, Will, everything I was taught about the brain in medical school has been proven wrong."
Really?
Everything he had been taught, and he wagers that most of the stuff that they were teaching now in medical school was going to be proven wrong.
Wait, where'd you go with that?
And so, what that led me to understand is that this view of and again, I was born in the year 2000. I'm growing up in this era in which smartphones and the internet, humanity and man it feels like we've understood the universe. You know how big the sun is, you know all the planets, Pluto's not even a planet anymore. And that was the key, that story that my dad told me was the key to seeing through the fog and being like, these descriptions of the universe might be useful and they might be semi-accurate, but there's so much more to the picture.
Yes.
And I really wanted to study the brain, not to do research, not to be a doctor, but to understand how my own mind worked and why I was making the decisions I was making, and to understand what to me is the greatest tool that I've been given on this earth, which is like the ability to ponder and to understand and to be curious about this realm.
Yes, many people don't take time to ponder anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just not part of their life.
Yeah, and we're in an informational hurricane.
Yeah.
Like the data points per unit time that our brains are taking in now, as opposed to 10 years ago, as opposed to 100 years ago, is just, I've said it to some of my friends, I'm frankly quite impressed that we are as sane as we are, and of course, like, we are quite a crazy species, but we are doing well given the speed at which everything's changing.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much information coming at you non-stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense that like some of us just have breaks and we need to just like go crazy for a bit because physiologically our system is just overwhelmed.
Right. Yes, and there's so many byproducts of that, of course, now.
Mm-hmm.
And it all has names.
Yeah.
And, of course, when I was your age, we didn't have names like that.
Exactly.
We didn't have names like PTSD
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. It didn't exist.
Totally. And and the names can be helpful, but they can also, bring you away from what is like the meat of the reality, which is what type of information is building a more structured and stable like architecture of consciousness that allows you to move forward, and what information is destabilizing the architecture of your consciousness. And so that's what neuroscience really like was for me, is to...
So that was your expansion of consciousness. Yeah.
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 I would say that.
Okay.
But then again, understand that I studied neuroscience for my freshman year and then got sent home. So like I had this huge expansion. I left my home, I traveled around in Europe, I started a new soccer team, I lived on my own, I started college, I discovered the forest, and then boom, I'm back living at home with my parents. So that was
that was quite a shift.
Yeah, but like a shift in an interesting way where it's like the world is opening up to you and then just the door gets like slammed shut. Yeah.
Back in San Diego.
Back with the parents. Not only back in San Diego with the parents, again, my family is in the medical industry.
Right.
So lockdown was very, very serious and very strongly enforced. Like I would come home and be in my bedroom, and have to stay in my bedroom, like preparing all my own meals, like out of like in a camping stove type situation for like 15 days in order to meet the quarantine period so I could integrate in with my family.
Yeah, but didn't you create bubbles? You had to do that to create a bubble?
Yeah, because I was coming back from Santa Cruz. I was coming back from like the college environment.
That was your isolation.
And then I had my isolation period. And so yeah, it was in hindsight just the most polar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most polar situation ever because of just how many new people I was meeting and how deeply I was sinking into the universe.
So did you realize what was happening to your mind at that time?
During the COVID time?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I mean, I was like us all in COVID, where I was kind of just going with the flow, and I thought nothing could really last so long as they would say it could. And I was just, in a way, I was happy with the advantages that being able to do school online was allowing me, because at that time I didn't truly value like what being, like when you're just home for a little bit, you don't truly value what being in person at a university is, and just how profound and potent those 4 years of your life when you get to be around a bunch of developing minds, all curious, and just how formative that is. So in the beginning, I was kind of like, I was just riding the wave, but very quickly I got very frustrated.
Yes, I can totally understand that. So you were there with your family and their medical background, very much so. And so, I mean, what was their take on it all? I mean, your father being a neurosurgeon, and I mean, how far did they go along with this, way of handling it?
They went above and beyond. Everything was by the book, constantly reading every day the new regulations, the new CDC suggestions, constantly talking about what is the verifiable things to believe, just constant appeals to the credibility of the medical system, and I was completely on board. I was feeling the negative effects of it on my personal life, but like logically I trusted my father. At that point I still trusted the Western medical system. I was still, very, very obviously pro-vaccine. I was pro-quarantine. I just was what I would call now naive about the whole entire situation, and about just the decision making chain of our bigger society. And I think when you're younger, you start to think that there's someone in some seat making an extremely informed decision. And I think that our systems are getting so complex and intertwined that it's really hard for people to, it's really hard in general dealing with even systems of economics, or what I call like chaotic systems, to make predictable results and decisions. And so it was very much by the book, and it was very, very strict.
Right, okay. So you then decided to maybe take up something like sales.
Yeah, and so the sales transition, well, there's like a chapter in there where I was living with my parents for a while, and eventually I had to move out. And so I took a bigger financial burden when I could have been living at home, and chose to rent a apartment with my friends during COVID.
Right.
And so then I again was back in kind of a more capital intensive, out of the nest, spending more money. And that was really good for me because I got to meet the reality of how much I was consuming. And I also got the time, I built my first music studio in that period of time.
Okay.
And so I started making music, which was huge. And at that time I was still studying neuroscience, but I was kind of tapping this new, richer part of my soul, which was bizarre to me because I was a very happy, very blessed kid, but the music I made was super profoundly sad.
Oh,
what would come out
interesting.
was this intense longing for love and for connection, and it was really bizarre to me because I genuinely went into it wanting to make cool, I guess braggadocious type songs, you know. I was trying to make old school boom bap hip hop, you know, and also philosophical and thoughtful songs.
Right. Kind of Dylan, maybe
yeah,
Bob Dylan.
And yeah, exactly. In from a hip hop standpoint, but very thought provoking, storytelling centric songs. And I kept just being most inspired to write these very, very sad songs.
Right.
And so that's also it was really, really profound to me because that's the beginning of whoa. There's something.
What's going on here?
What's going on here?
Yeah,
I'm missing something, you know?
Right.
And yeah, during that time, I was really focused on getting back to school so I could continue my soccer career because I was very, very driven. And I wanted to make money, and I thought that that was a foundational skill that I would solve problems for me to be good at, which was just capital, being able to access capital. And so I had a job working as a door-to-door salesman for a solar company.
Right.
In Santa Cruz when I came back, and that seemed great because it seemed like it was aligned with my feelings about climate change, and renewable energies and harvesting energy from the sun. And so then I came back to Santa Cruz. There was also a summer in there where I worked 3 months in Alaska in a fish factory.
Well, that's a twist.
yeah. Before the sales, I was just having this feeling of that's how far pressed I was into just from staying home that I was I want to get out there.
Right.
So I worked a whole summer processing fish in a factory, pushing big racks around, and made some money that summer. It was 16 hours a day, seven days a week.
Yeah.
It really,
they have very light nights there too, right?
Oh yeah, the land of the midnight sun.
Yeah.
And so
didn't notice those hours so much, maybe, or not.
it was gnarly. That's a story for another time. But I learned so much about my soul and about hard work and about that the system of harvesting salmon, this is a really spiritual thing, millions and millions and millions and millions of salmon coming from the ocean and flowing into the rivers.
Right.
And there's lots of indigenous people that had those jobs, and it was terrible to them to see how much waste were in these factories. And it was a whole trip of an era.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was that, and then finally I'm back in Santa Cruz and I'm settled, and then I have this sales job, and I'm excited because I'm in Santa Cruz and I'm able to, get people aligned with solar energy. It seemed like a pretty good gig at the time, and I like to talk to people.
A green thing to do, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you went on to something else after that, didn't you?
Yeah, and so the issue was, it turns out there's just a lot of different interests at play in the solar energy game, and especially with like PG&E and different like net energy metering policy. You can look into all this, but yeah, there's somehow, some way in California, one of the sunniest places in the United States, there's a serious lobbying to make solar energy much less affordable for the average homeowner.
Really?
Yeah, because when you produce your own energy as a home, you spread excess energy into the grid, which basically causes the grid a slightly more infrastructural load, some more costs, and the grid wasn't made for decentralized energy production. It was made for centralized energy production and the dissemination, the spreading of that energy from house. So it really gets in the way of PG&E, which is a centuries old company that has just is so entrenched in government and so entrenched in everything that we do, and almost everyone is paying their power bill. Like, think about the size of this business, This is a power bill, this is infrastructural. Like, people don't think about just how large that industry is. And so that was an issue that I realized people who are putting in solar were actually getting, having these predatory laws extract capital from them. And also the solar gold rush was such that the companies who were doing it, they weren't predatory necessarily, but they would offer people things that a independent contractor could do for like a half or a third of the price, but they would upsell it, so it was just making it affordable for the consumer. And so
that bothered you.
And the summation that I'll say is, like, I realized I wouldn't sell this on my home, in my on Gage Drive where I grew up in San Diego. I would not. I wouldn't feel comfortable because of the experience that people that I did sell. I had like people who I would make great friendships with, and then it turns out their systems weren't turned on for a year, or that while their systems weren't turned on, they were getting charged an energy metering fee by the city because they had gotten solar panels even though the solar panels weren't producing them power. And just all of this red tape and this foggy stuff that I as a salesman was kind of convincing people to do and then disappearing.
Right.
And it just wasn't, I was only the tip of a spear that wasn't delivering in full. And I couldn't ensure what was going on. And I think that's the struggle with sales in general. It's like, if you're selling something that you're not fulfilling in full, it's very likely that you'll be cutting the truth into a favorable shape for the people that you're selling.
Right.
And so, yeah, the big truth, but I will say I was quite good at sales. I was very, very talented at it. I took rejection really well. I was able to talk to a lot of people. I loved knocking on doors and seeing people in their homes. So interesting. Like, think about your average day versus the day of someone who walks to 150 homes, knocks on the door, sees peoples and family in their homes and what they're doing. It's really a rich way of living in a way where you see so much.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's like your life is dense with the universe. Like, how people are doing.
Right.
You know who's living in these houses.
Yeah.
And I've knocked the doors of all of Westcliff, like of a lot of these towns around here. Like, there was days where I was just alone, knocking with a clipboard, trying to convince people to go to solar. And so what I realized in that scenario is that using my energy to support something that was aligned, even if it made me no money, would offer me unlimited energy and motivation. Because if I could convince someone to do something that I know is going to deliver and be good for them, the energetic gratification that I get from that it's like a plus sum motivating. It continues this cascade of momentum where I just want to convince more, and I want to spread this gift more and more and more. Versus if I use a bunch of my energy to convince someone and then they feel cheated, it really deflates me, and it makes me just want to, it completely kills my momentum, because I start to question, what am I aligning myself with, and what is my purpose here on earth?
And what are you giving off when you're trying to sell too?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like this, that was a really profound realization of like, whoa, even basically align yourself with things, even if they're super simple and super small, that do a good job and that are of measurable, real benefit.
Right.
And even if it's not making you tons of money, you will get you will be more motivated, and basically you'll have 10x energy to do this thing as compared to something that isn't necessarily aligned with the greater good.
Right.
Because it's so motivating to provide something that's beneficial.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you totally dropped sales at that point?
Well, no. I mean, really, well, I guess I did. Yeah. So I did. I got burnt out. I got burnt out from doing sales, and I had some money that I had made in sales, and I wanted to now invest it and cut my expenses and start a cash flow business.
Right.
That was my interest.
Yeah.
And so I moved out of my apartment. I bought this like Toyota, what was it called? Toyota Dolphin. It's like a van, and I wanted to live the van life in Santa Cruz and see what business I could start. And so what I ended up doing was acquiring a bunch of different vans and parking them on people's properties and charging a rental price for these vans. And so this was at the time, this was like, the idea was to have like low cost and have positive cash flow, positive recurring passive income.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it sounds pretty. Yeah. I was getting these vans for like, relatively cheap, like a couple $1,000s, and then I would rent them out for like $500 a month. I would provide people with cheap housing. I could control it. It was my own business. It was great. But it ended up getting very complicated being a landlord and having tenants, and because I was providing cheap housing, my customers of my small business and the sources of my passive income were housing insecure people desperate for housing.
Yes, of course.
And
yes.
I was able to help a lot of people find housing, but also a lot of the people who would search for alternative housing were felons and were people who had unstable jobs and people who had drug problems and people who wouldn't be accepted in traditional housing. And so that was the era in which I was very ungrounded. I was living in my van. I had a lot of my resources poured into these assets that were being lived in by other people that I was constantly trying to tend to, and things got very complicated, and there was a very, very scary situations where people were using like IV drugs in a vehicle that I owned, and I had to go in and kick them out, and they were, I was kicking people out of their houses, and
it's totally
it was totally the opposite
way, the way you wanted to live.
Exactly. And so that business worked out on paper like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
It just in reality was just not what I wanted to be doing is not even the way to express it. It was just like it taught me that if you're building an organization and you're optimizing for financial return, that you're going to end up in situations that aren't aligned, and you're not actually going to be building systems that allow, because the goal of life for me is to build systems that allow my energy to be multiplied to its highest good.
Right.
You know, it's like, I want to build a system that allows me to input energy, and the output is great things that are in alignment with me, you know?
Yes.
And so, I think for that particular project, I was too focused on the ROI and
the actual physicality of having to deal with it.
exactly. Rather than the real outcome. The real outcome, I think, of my energy expenditure is what I've been focusing on now. So
right.
Yeah. So then, to get to the important bit, I decided I wanted to liquidate that whole business, sell all of the vans, give with fair notice, let my tenants know that they were going to need to find a new opportunity for housing, and that I was going to sell all of these. So I had to go through this process of letting everyone know, cleaning up these cars, cleaning out all this stuff that was left there, dealing with any difficulty with people wanting to squat in that space. And so that was this like 3-week period of time where I sublet a apartment at this forest community that's pretty well known around here in the underground music circles, called Fern Gully.
Okay.
And it's quite the legendary space. It's up in the forest, and it's been like a community house for a long, long while. And from older people in the community, they talk about there being like in the 70s and 60s, it being a music house.
Right.
And it's just kind of collectively understood by the different owners that have cycled through it that like this house is to be filled with organizers and musicians. And at that time I wasn't a musician, but I think there was like a 2-week sublet, and no one would take a 2-week sublet, but it aligned perfectly with my little necessity to liquidate all of my van situation. And so I stayed there. And
so, I mean, did you hit much resistance? I mean, did they give you a lot of problem having to leave? I mean, that's not an easy job.
Yeah, I actually had one of my vehicles stolen from me during that period of time. Yeah, someone figured out that they were going to move out and found like a spare key that I had hidden in the vehicle and stole it, and I never saw it again. Yeah. Yes. And so like this was real, you know, this was thousands of dollars that I invested in this. This was getting real dangerous and real sticky.
I would think.
Deep in the backwoods of Santa Cruz, looking for a vehicle that I had trackers in it, alone on rainy nights, and just really questioning, like, how did I get here, you know? And just learning so much about how not to structure your life.
Did you feel in danger at any time?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It was one of the biggest things that whole thing taught me is desperate people are the most deceptive. And when your housing or your child's housing is at risk, or potentially something you can solve, you can tell lies that are so utterly convincing. Just I feel like I'm very sharp, and I can have a very good nose for people who are going to do me wrong. But and I don't hold anything against anyone who's desperate doing what they need to do to provide for themselves and their family. It's just, when it comes down to it, when we feel unsafe, we are very, very capable beings when it comes to lying, when it comes to stealing, cheating, when it comes to violence, when it comes to being on that. And yeah, I want to be in a situation where I can offer a lending hand to those people and not necessarily have and in the end that's kind of what happened, where I was like, look, I can look for this super hard and like dedicate my life to like vengeance, or I can be like, I made the wrong call. I'm gonna cut my losses and I'm gonna focus on where my energy is flowing easily right now.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So then you talked to your friend Tristan.
Well,
around this time. So how did that all evolve?
Yeah, so that all evolved. So Tristan was my friend from San Diego, and he had moved up to Santa Cruz, and he was, at that time, he was going to college. Like, we had played soccer together kind of a little bit, gone through some serious injuries together, which were very transformational, but he was living in Santa Cruz going to college. We had moved out of our apartment that we had in Santa Cruz together, and he and I was living in my van doing this wild van life stuff.
Right.
And the whole, it kind of started in a dual sense where like me and Tristan, a year, like before actually all of the van life stuff happened, we had the original Temptations Bazaar, which was, there was this big music festival organized by our friends called Farm Fest, and they had a bunch of vendors who all fell through, and I got a call and they were like, could you vend anything? And me and Tristan were living together, and on the spring of the moment we invented this concept called Temptations Bazaar and brought a bunch of extra tables, made lemonade, made grilled cheeses, and said, if you have any art or any goods, you can just put them on this table and we'll sell them for you.
Okay.
And by the end, we had this brilliant array of like community goods and artworks and vintage clothing, and it just turned into this like amazing spread. The offerings that the community had were just so good. Wild foraged herbs, cool teas, chocolates and coffees, and just like it turned out there was a lot of people coming to the event wanting to share their artisan goods, and that had been a time that I had always remembered where I was selling for other people, and I was like, I was being like, look at all this amazing stuff, and kind of playing this bit of this like this marketeer at this music event, this bazaar, this bazaar like salesman, showman, bazaar showman is kind of more what it was, and then I gave all of the money that I made to these artisans, and they were like so amazed, and I paid the bands and the event producers, and I was able to just like spread this love so much, and so that had always stuck in my mind as this time.
Yeah, that's quite memorable, I have to say.
Yeah, where like I, on a whim, had aligned my biggest skill set, which was my conviction and my persuasiveness, with the community.
Right.
And everything had lined up, and like, boom, I had made great value, had a great time, great connection, so much support from the community, but we didn't do another one for a year.
Okay.
So it was like this whole year had just happened, and I had still thought of that as like, oh, this funny moment in time where we did this silly thing called the Temptations Bazaar. There was no documentation, no Instagram, no intention for it to be anything other than this one time.
So word traveled amongst the community for them to all deliver to you?
Everyone would just show up, and people would have like their art with them. And,
right.
Because it was, I think it was an event that was promoted to be like bring your art and bring your stuff like that, and also during that year, a lot of people had come up to us and been like, yo, when's the next Temptations Bazaar?
Right.
And it was this silly thing where we were like, what are people remembering this?
But at some stage, and you think, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't take that concept seriously for a long time, but I did have this deep desire once I got more involved in the music scene, especially when I started living at Fern Gully. So fast forward to like after the van life phase, I started living at Fern Gully. There's at Fern Gully, there's just so many magical people around. There's just like the best musicians you've ever seen, people who are amazing music producers and DJs and organizers and businesswomen, but like all in this very earthen, new age, close living community. And
what area is this actually?
it's in it's kind of up by UCSC area.
Yeah. Okay.
Up above UCSC. And I wanted to contribute so bad, and I knew I had the capability to be a contributor, and I didn't know how, and I was really eager to find the way that I could become the infrastructure for this like community and for this system, because like I make my own music and I had developed more of my own art and stuff at that point, but to me it just felt like there was this abundance of creation and
the right vibration.
the right vibration, but a scarcity of infrastructure and a scarcity of support. All of these people were definitely struggling financially. Art was not paying for their living, and so they were all working really, really hard at second jobs to make this lifestyle and make this community work. And it wasn't sustainable for a lot of them. It was really draining. And I started working specifically with one band called the Flat Sun Society. And I was really, really dead set that if they shot a live set of their band in nature, that it would be like a very, very powerful video that could go viral. And I really got cued in on video marketing as just the biggest leverage point in the commerce of art and culture.
Right.
And the truth is, throughout the internet, I see all of these amazing healers and artists and musicians who are making it and spreading their message virally through kind of high level video production.
Right.
And not like super high level professional, but like there were so many case studies throughout all of the world that people who I believed were not even as talented as the people that I was living with were becoming superstars overnight via the right imaging.
Right, exactly.
And and for whatever reason, my mind had no care in the world that I had never shot a music video before, never produced a music video before, never worked in this realm at all. I just was like, look, like I have a friend in San Diego. I'll fly him up. I want to show him this space. I have a spot. Let's do it. And they were super amazed that I even cared that much.
Right.
But for me, it was just like I was saying, it was cool stuff that I know was going to be cool, and I know I could spread a cool message. So I had unlimited energy for it. It wasn't draining to me. And luckily, I did have this solar money and then this liquidated business money. So I wasn't actually working at the time. I was like trying to remember who I was after this whole
I would imagine.
Van life situation. And so I flew my friend Talon Shirts up, who has ended up being one of the most amazing collaborator. Also went to high school with me, just a world-class filmmaker, always underappreciated, always just has the best vision, most creative. One of the few creators that like, we just have like no resistance in our communication. One of those people that it's just like, we see the same thing and we make the same thing happen. And so it was this really transformational time where I flew up my friend, and he just gets to stay in this forest community with me, meet this whole amazing band, and we're gonna bring them out into the redwoods and shoot this amazing music video in the redwoods. And it was just like every moment of this experience was just like, wow, like this is so dope, you know? Like we're sitting together at a coffee shop with this amazing band, drawing out the set for this like forest music video and figuring out the tech, and just every moment of it was just like
this.
Just like, yes, like this is, and I wrote in my journal, I was like, this is the most involved, this is the coolest like day of my life.
Right.
This is the coolest. and people turned to me and asked what the vision was that I saw. And I just like, I was really just having an amazing time. And it wasn't stress-free, you know? It turns out after everything happened, everything aligned, what happened on the day of the shoot?
What happened?
Pouring rain. Pouring rain. And so, you know, everybody's like, oh, dude, tough, you know, like all this planning, like we can just, you know, postpone it. Like maybe Talon can come another time in the summer.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, guys, understood, but give me an hour. I have some ideas. So I was at the coffee shop and just hopped on the phone and just called everyone with a cool set, with any connection that I knew in Santa Cruz. From all of the 5 years that I've been here, just called everyone up and was like, look, I'm trying to do this. It has to be today.
Right.
Today's the only day it works. And after just like probably 15 phone calls, I had 3 different options for like house, kind of like settings like this, you know, where we could shoot an indoor concert, some that cost money, some that were free. And the one that ended up actually working out was this place called Roundhouse, which funny enough, and was one of the first and most influential house shows that I went to that really introduced me into the scene. It's this beautiful, they have done a couple bits of content there. It's another beautiful forest house in the mountains of Santa Cruz, and it's literally a circle, like it's a sphere. They have a spiral staircase right in the middle. It's all just like, it's the most ridiculously geometrically made wooden house. And
sounds wonderful.
And yeah, and so that right then, that like, I think that was a very potent, energetic moment in my story, honestly, because that could have not happened. I could have accepted, like literally the whole vision was doing it outside in the redwoods.
Okay, there. Yeah.
That was everything.
And then that was smashed.
And it had to be smashed.
Yeah.
And I just like, instead of accepting defeat, just accepted that this was supposed to happen.
Right.
Because I'm going to activate this network and something else is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just like broke through that little obstacle that
that's
the universe...
That's a wonderful life lesson in for yourself.
Totally,
to step back and look at and think, okay, I can do this.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I just broke through that.
Yeah.
And I think especially in Santa Cruz with this more laid back flow culture, which I've learned and loved so much of, I do think there is like a special majesty in having a kind of like piercing, forward moving energy within this beautiful place.
Right.
Because it needs it. It wants, I think the universe overall does have some respect for people who would just not take no for an answer. And so yeah, we organized this music video, we got talent in there, and I think we shot the most successful piece of content in that band's, history.
Yes.
It on our Instagram, it has like 70,000 views.
Yeah.
Which is quite big for us. It was like way back in the day. We had an artist make their logo and put it on there. We had shorts made. We have a long form made. We had a drone shot flying out of the redwoods into it. Did the whole bit. And
what are they doing today?
Flat Sun Society. So the last Flat Sun Society show that I saw was at Felton Music Hall a couple weeks ago. They opened for a band Gitkin. It was the first time I'd seen them in a while. They their lead singer and guitarist Jake Pador plays almost every Wednesday at the Lighthouse in Santa Cruz. He's a true community just offering. Like he just offers his music to the community so selflessly every Wednesday, just dedicated. And he is very much in my mind like he almost is Flat Sun Society. And he even like brought me into feeling like I was part of that society because I cared so much about it. But the band, as I knew them, was 2 drummers, like 2 full drum kits, a percussionist, a bassist, and 2 guitarists. And then it's Jake like live looping, like doing some very, very, technical modulation of his vocals and of his guitar work over this amazing psychedelic rock band.
Right.
And I think right now, so they just...
So you kind of turned to a promoter then at that point.
So yeah, that was an important transition.
Yes.
Where like my stoke was breathing fire into this band.
Yeah.
And not only like promoting them to, like with that video, to the world and to venues, which I'm sure they've used as part of their press kit, you know, also to them. Like this was something that Jake said, because Jake is the lead singer, and he would always thank me so much for getting his bandmates stoked on the band. Because if you have someone coming from the outside saying, "Oh my gosh, like what you're doing is amazing, like I see the vision."
Yeah.
Artists need that so much more than you would realize. Like we often look at artists and we see these people who must know that they're so amazing, you know? But often artists are very, very insecure and benefit greatly from hearing just how profound of an effect they've had on the community. And so yeah, that was one of the first big media projects.
Right.
That was the first groundbreaking media projects for the Temptations Bazaar.
Right, exactly. So this is how it all came together then.
Exactly. So like all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is kind of like the Temptations Bazaar.
Right.
And I was like, wait, I'm working with this collective. And so then I was like, whoa, like I had to whip an Instagram up into shape. I had to whip all my media, because suddenly the vision transformed from this mystical marketplace to marketing infrastructure.
Absolutely.
For the creative community that I was a part of.
Yes.
And yeah, so that was one of the biggest that was the biggest seminal transition. And also a funny point is that at the end of that 3-week sublet at Fern Gully, I was planning to go. I got invited to go do like a blitz, like a sales blitz. Have you ever heard of a sales blitz?
Not really.
So what a sales blitz is like a company that's selling something will put out a call for salesmen from all over the country usually, and offer to fly them out and house them in a hot market. And over a month, it'll just be every day selling in this market, trying to make as much money in as many sales in a short period of time as possible.
What you mean, online or door to door?
No, door to door.
Door to door.
You get a bunch of sales reps and you square out a bunch of different places, and it's like, this is your realm, knock every door and that, and you hit the streets like ants, you know?
And you enjoy that?
Well, no. But you can make. I would use it. I would go to those as a way of making money in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have anything planned after that liquidation of my van business. So I had planned to go to the East Coast kind of on a whim and sell pest control, which is like crazy.
An antithesis to what you were doing before.
Again, the antithesis. I had this dichotomy in my head of like what was actually feeding my soul, and what was actually offering me opportunity in life. And
so to bridge the two,
well, and also my philosophy at the time was like, I'm gonna make money to be able to build something that is for the benefit of the world.
Right.
So I need to make money to build something, you know? So that's how I thought of it, is like acquire capital, and then I can get into my building phase.
Right, yeah.
And so that's where I think I got it wrong, where I think that you should always be of course capital is necessary, but if you build something cool, capital is available, it turns out. And most of the coolest thing people have ever built in the modern economy has not been funded with their own money, it turns out. And so, but yeah, so I after that music video, the people at Fern Gully, at this community that I was living, they invited me to sublet a different room in the house for a month.
Ah, right. So you could stay here.
And so I could stay. And so I said no to the sales blitz, and I got another month. And that also meant a lot to me, because I'm a renegade, kind of rebel, like always. I'm the youngest of four. I've always kind of been the lone wolf, always cast away, you know? And like that has turned my personality into like cast me away. You don't even know me. That has like developed into my personality.
Yeah.
And so to be told in such a material way, like, we like what you're doing.
Right.
Stay.
Yeah, let's do more.
Yeah, let's do more of that.
Yeah,
exactly. It was like, whoa, you were here for 3 weeks,
right,
and you did this like amazing music video shoot.
Yeah.
And so that 2 weeks turned into a month, turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months.
Okay.
And so what I mean is like a 1 month sublet, then on top of that a 3 month, and then so it ended up being almost a year that I lived at Fern Gully.
Right. And in that time, were you introduced to Chez Serendip? Did this enter your horizon then?
No. This was just so beyond what I could possibly imagine. In those times, I literally like, I would dream of having a place, what I would call like a temple in the redwoods.
Right.
A place where the sole focus of it could be consistent community events and live music events that could be curated, and that what I always wanted was like a space where events could be not so energy intensive. It wasn't like a festival where like everything had to be brought out, so everyone comes in one day, then it's just like huge effort,
right,
and then everything is over.
Yes.
I wanted it to be like this churn of like constant, consistent community and music. And yeah, I would literally dream of that and I would tell my friends, like, it's possible, like, you don't know what these woods have to offer. And I guess I believe that just because of how magical my whole entire experience at Fern Gully was.
Right, exactly.
That made me trust that, like, okay, like, there is potential for anything.
Yeah.
And there's more people who want community to be gathered at their space. But again, you need infrastructure.
Yes.
You need a proper pitch. And like, I knew how to pitch very, very well. And I also had learned that if you don't have a deliverable with the pitch, that the pitch isn't very important. So I had this deep desire to build the infrastructure for to be A to Z, to be like someone who's pitching my own. Like, that's the best feeling in the world, when you're selling yourself and you know you're gonna deliver. You know,
absolutely.
Like, I can do that job, and it's me. It's not someone else. I'm gonna be the one who does that. And that's how it was with the video, in a weird way, where like I just spoke that vision into reality,
right? And
I'll move the world to deliver on that, you know, because it's a matter of pride and a matter of honor. And so
you did that for Chez Serendip, I believe.
Well, yeah, I mean, so now between Fern Gully and Chez Serendip, we must have done, you know, 3 or 4 more music videos, and probably like 10 or 15 in-person events, what we would call bazaars. So it would be a music event. They would hit us up, and I would be like, okay, what type of marketplace, what type of goods do you want at this music event? And they'll be like, oh, we're thinking leather bags, and maybe some fresh food, and maybe some smoking blends, and some clothes. Or we just want live painters, or we just want lighting. And so depending on the event, we would curate completely unique and specific marketplaces for that. And so during that whole time, we got this super extensive network of vendors and musicians and venues and live painters and chefs and vintage clothing sellers.
Yeah.
And luckily we were wise enough to document this network and
Yes.
and build up our Google Docs.
Right.
So we have this really, really extensive network. But yeah, so it was like 15 music events, just like countless bazaars.
Yeah.
And
you're kind of bringing all of that here now.
yeah.
Yes.
We are, yeah. So we're bringing all of that here now. And yeah, I mean, so that all started with like this mixer that happened. Sean and Elisa were, hosted a bunch of people in the arts community and said that they wanted to have a curated cultural sanctuary. And luckily I had a very well documented history of, event curation and also music videos, which is something they want here, and just networking within the music industry, but also strong infrastructural pathways to, put it short, monetize the offerings of these artists, because I don't want to live in the world where the starving artist is the norm. And in order to make the artist be able to live off their work, you need to build a system that allows the people who want to patronize the arts, the people who want to support the arts, to see those who are dedicating their life to art. Because once you take the musician off the stage and you hear their music right next to you, or the healer right next to you, or the painter right next to you, you start to see just the true value that it brings to a community to have this vibrance of expression all around. Like just how much that color and that texture and that sound and that taste of life is giving to you, and is worth giving money to. And so I think me and Elisa really aligned, because she wants to be part of an arts culture, but she wants to build real, especially nonprofit infrastructure, and access grants, and access like donations that can support creating incubators for art and culture in a time where they say that like art and culture, these are like messages from the collective unconscious. And the more we stifle our art and culture's community, the more we shove down that subconscious messaging that's trying to shout out to the collective and be like, look, this is what we're ignoring,
Right.
And so that's what I kind of see Chez Serendip and the Bazaar as, is kind of this like megaphone, this amplification of what the people are saying. Like it doesn't matter to me if it's punk, it doesn't matter to me if it's death metal or crazy DJ stuff or freaking burlesque or stuff. And like the reason I say all these things is because those aren't the things that I would genuinely first go to. I'm much more on like like higher vibe, uplifting, loving energy.
Right.
But if the people are authentically saying this and supporting this, it's because it needs to be heard.
Right.
It's because it's felt.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. You take it that way. That it's across the board, whatever they can present.
Exactly.
If anybody wants to reach you, they have something that they want to put in front of you.
Yeah.
How can they reach you?
Yeah. So. Temptationsbazaar@gmail.com is our email. Also on Instagram, it's just Temptations Bazaar, Temptations and then BAZAAR. And we're a collective, we're a collaborative. If you're a videographer, if you're an artist of any kind, if you have a healing workshop or any sort of ceremony you want to lead, we are open to it all. And we're super willing to connect you with more infrastructure to make that happen. Like if you're in the Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, Big Sur, San Francisco area, I can put you in touch with, venues that need your work. I can put you in touch with events that need your work. I'm really for making this whole cultural community more vibrant and more streamlined and more collectivized, because there really is something brewing here.
The magic of the redwoods?
Yeah, the magic of the redwoods and the magic of these nutrient-dense soil in the California coast, and of Big Sur and of Esalen, and of the sacred earthen energy of this sacred land, and also always knowing that like this is native land first, and we are visitors on this land, and my ancestors came here most likely for the wrong reasons, and it's my duty to dig into that truth and to hold it in my consciousness, not just like move blindly with the reality of our occupation of this land just in the back of my brain, but hold it central in my consciousness, and try to do the best I can to move with motivation, not be disheartened by that, but move with that as motivation, because I must heal myself, because this is,
and heal others.
Exactly.
It seems, yes.
And
yeah.
I must heal myself, because this can't happen anymore. We can't just have the same old story just play out over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Like there's another band that I have worked with and love. It's called Orchestra Gold, and they often take time during their concerts while their music is playing to speak revolutionary words to the people.
Oh, okay.
And he said, the revolution is out there, but the revolution is in here too.
Right.
And I really, really believe that like holding the dark sides of your ancestry and the dark sides of yourself with compassion, and recognizing them and saying to them like, look, this can't go on. I will not tear apart my community and my relationship with myself anymore. And that has to do with your relationship with substances, your relationship with people, for men especially, your relationship with women and the divine feminine, and with Mother Earth. This is deep work that the earth is calling for right now. And that's the other thing is like
we're going to have to wrap in a minute. I think we've got some wonderful points across. Yeah,
so much to say.
Yeah, you do. We could go for hours. I'd love to go for hours, but I don't think I can load it up like that.
Yeah, well, hopefully another time, maybe another episode.
Oh, absolutely. I set that up with returning people because, we want to follow the path you're on. We want to know what's happening.
Totally.
And so absolutely, yes, you'll be coming back, I hope.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much,
Susan.
Will. I really, really appreciate it. It's spectacular. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
As I sit with everything Will shared today, from neuroscience student and college soccer player through that deep COVID awakening, to founding the Temptations Bazaar, and now curating the magical Redwood Sanctuary at Chez Serendip, I'm left in awe that you truly embody the spirit of a 2000's Renaissance man, Will. Someone who moves fluidly between science and soul, athletics and artistry, community building, and deep ecological connection. It's beautiful to witness. You've shown us that real pivots are possible when we listen to that inner call, that it's never too late to reconnect and remember who we really are. So here's my question for you, the listener. Where in your own life are you feeling a quiet or loud pull towards something different right now? What would rooting deep and blooming look like for you in this season? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments or send me a message. Your pivot story might just inspire the next person who needs it. Thank you again, Will Barba. Everyone, please go follow the work at Temptations Bazaar and Chez Serendip. There is so much beauty and healing happening there. Until next time, keep reconnecting, keep remembering, and stay open to your own courageous next step. Take care, and bye from Restart at any age. Until next time.
Playing you out with Madame Rose Sylvie. I'm
Acabei de alcançar o mar. Esse é o lugar pra se adequar. É bom seu ar só pra relaxar. Vou caminhar, depois nadar. Pegar o barco e mergulhar. Minhas feridas vão cicatrizar. Não tenho medo, basta sonhar.